Hey everyone, this is GosuDad and welcome back to another edition of casual-friendly and family-friendly StarCraft 2 casting. This is in the 5th season of the Blizzard Online Ladder. We are past the season lock, so we are locked into our leagues and our divisions, but are still earning rank points, using up that bonus pool, and trying to beef up our MMR before the end of the season. So we can get that prepared for the beginning of Season 6. So this is a Terran versus Protoss game on a 2-player map, Arid Plateau. My opponent, Kaizen, we'll take a quick look at his base, is a mid-level Silver League player. I think after this game he was ranked 47 in his league. Starting off with a typical pylon at 9 and doing a quick scout around his base. Myself starting with the supply depot at 9, which is my pretty typical standard start. 2-player map, we can see Kaizen doing a little click here into my base. After scouting out his base, he's gonna go down the map towards my own. So each of these bases has a pretty small entrance ramp of that typically walled off typical size. You can see my SCV doing a little bit of scouting, looking for that proxy pylon. Kaizen taking a brief stop by the Silnaga Tower on the left hand side. So again, a 2-player map, we both know where each other is spawning. So we're just doing a little bit of scouting, myself for some pylons, and for himself he did some scouting to look for some early cheese for myself, which was kind of surprising. But here his little probe gets into the base. Interesting that he was rallied to right where my barracks was, and my SCV chasing him around the base. So both of us going for an early gas here. I've got gas with 1 harvest. And what am I talking about? He has no gas at all. I am being crazy. Instead, he's chrono boosting out probes. So he should be having a probe advantage on myself. Going for that gateway and a second pylon, which is kind of interesting. He's not even remotely supply block. Now going for an assimilator. And notice he had a lot of minerals banked up. So now going for a second assimilator. So there's my comment about the early assimilators. I did take a brief glance at this replay before doing this cast. So I've got the 3 workers on that gas, which should give me about 100 gas per minute. Should be enough to build this factory pretty quickly, then Starport, then Banshees, etc., which you've seen several times. Kaizen bringing this probe down into the lower left-hand corner, over to this expansion over here, and very purposely going up to the top of this cliff. Should be seeing a proxy pylon or something like that. Looking back in his base, he's got nothing else building except for this very first gateway. I think that gateway was kind of slow. But now that that's built, I should be expecting something from him. No, it looks like he's putting down his cyber core here, and should be seeing a pylon coming sometime this year at this other base. Myself walling off the base, excuse me, with a supply depot, starting to push out Marines and going for the orbital command. As you can see, getting behind in that supply count, significantly behind in the worker supply, thanks to him being able to chrono boost out those probes. So he's got a bunch of gas banked and some minerals banked, but as soon as this cybernetics core finishes, we should see some more things being built, some gateways being built, and 1 proxy pylon here, and a second proxy pylon behind these bushes. That's an interesting place to put that. I have a feeling he may have been playing on this map before. I have not played very much on this map. I think a lot of people veto this map, it being a 2-player map. As mentioned in my drone rush video. Continuing to pump out Marines, and as you can see, a single zealot coming down to this area. We can follow him with the camera. That's nice and fun. Keeping up on the production over here, trying to keep up with the SCV production, taking a look at the worker supply tab. I am down by 4 workers, so at this point our army supplies are even, but he is working on that warp gate technology. So even though our supplies are even, his supply in the army side of things will rocket ahead as soon as that warp gate technology is done. Now building up to a 4-gate, so he is ready to go to do this 4-gate push. Ooh, 3 harvesters on each assimilator, so he should have plenty of gas to do some warp gate aggression. About halfway through my first Banshee, and a small force of about 6 Marines in the front. But one thing I did here that was a little bit different than I've done in the past is that I lifted up my factory and built a second tech lab so that I could swap the factory with the barracks, so I could pump out, I could start researching STIM, and so I could pump out Marauders. So this would be a slight change from before, from previous builds where I built tanks. Instead I'll be building Hellions and Marauders. And it'll be interesting to see how that works against this Protoss player. As mentioned earlier in the cast, I haven't played very many Protoss at all this season, mostly playing against Terrans. So here he's breaking down these gold rocks, which I'm not really sure what the purpose of that was. If he was really going to expand to a gold expansion, I would expect him to pick this expansion here, but regardless, he's got a couple of proxy pylons so he can warp things in, and you can see the army supply starting to ramp up from himself from those warpins. But right now he is down by 7 supply in the army, and getting ready to do some kind of push, or at least some kind of defensive posture here. So he should be expecting another warp in. He's got plenty of supply. And myself, since I've been steadily building units and building these heavy supply units such as these Banshees, been able to keep up with the army supply, and actually I'm ahead by about 6 supply, but of course as he warps in those units he catches up quite quickly. So slowing down speed, this is a pretty short game, but slowing things down to see what happens here with this battle. We can see that he's bunched up near the bottom of the ramp, and checking out his vision, he doesn't have vision up until these zealots come up. One of those zealots being taken out by the large force of Hellions, Marines, Marauders, and these 2 Banshees. At this point he does see that I do have 2 Banshees, so it should be interesting to see what happens in response to that. Back at his base he has started to build 2 more gateways, warp in 2 more gateways, and you can see that he's got his focus on that warp gate there. So now he's building up to 6 gate, which I really don't think that he can support 6 gates off of 1 base. Just doing a quick pause right here before the action begins. Let's take a look at his income and see whether he can support 6 gates or not. So every minute he's going to be pulling in about 600 minerals, which would be about 4 stalkers, right? And 200 gas. So that's about 4 stalkers at a time. The warp in time for a stalker, kind of confusing to see here. So he's got a cooldown of 18 seconds on these ones. I think he just warped in some stalkers though. Sentries. Okay, so the gist being that I guess he could warp in 6 zealots all at once if he really wanted to. So I'm not really sure that his income necessarily matches with this force. Now, after that first attack, I went ahead and sent my first 2 Banshees, one of my damaged Banshees, up and over to this expansion. I had this SCV, you can see him, he's on patrol back and forth behind these bushes. So my idea was I'll just keep him moving back and forth and I'll be able to see if my opponent is expanding. So seeing that he is not expanded, I went ahead and sent these 2 Banshees. Now the other thing here that I've done is I have this starport rallied to the Banshees, and so any more Banshees that I build will automatically go up there. So this 3rd Banshee is on his way without me having to do any more micromanagement of that. And looking at the base here, I've got 3 Marauders, 1 halfway done, and 3 Hellions, and looks like 7 Marines. And compare that to his force here of about 9 Stalkers, 2 Zealots, and 3 Sentries. So that's not too bad. The Sentries have enough energy to put down some force fields. Not quite enough for Guardian Shield necessarily on any of them, but he may be able to save up for some Guardian Shield and come in. So it'll be interesting to see whether these what impact these Banshees have on this particular engagement. So my opponent again building up to that 4 base. Now he did see the Banshees, so I think somewhere in here he starts building a forge. So we'll turn up the speed just a little bit there and see what happens. So now he is up to 6 gate, which is pretty significant, and I'm continuing to build Banshees. Now I'm also building the sensor tower, which is something, I'm building a proxy pylon here closer to the battle, which is very good. Got my Banshees just kind of hanging out here on the right hand side. So once that sensor tower comes up, if we switch over to my view, you can see that I can see this big blob of red on the map, bright red. So I can see that his units are still in the area. He's still hanging out near the base, which is good for this Banshee attack because that means that there'll be less defenders to attack the Banshees. Now, of course, them being air units, the only thing they have to worry about are sentries and stalkers. So as long as he's trying to keep up this pressure at the front of my base, that means that their mission will be even more successful. Now, up at the front, it is pretty much a concern, even in bronze level, that you and your opponent will be at a similar supply level. Now, we're only 9 minutes into the game, but if we look at the supply count, I'm actually ahead by about 9 supply, and these Banshees are 9 supply. So actually, that means as far as army count goes, we are actually at the same level of supply in the base. So his army right here compared to my army right here, we're at a similar supply level. Now I do, in that supply count, are units that are currently being built. So this 3 from this Banshee and 2 from this Marauder do count towards that, so I'm actually only barely slightly ahead on that supply count. Now, Stim has finished as far as that research goes, and I don't think I was researching anything else, so this will be a pretty even battle if this group decides to push in at this time. So getting the clock going again, SCV still continuing to scout, and my opponent now building a forge, so should be seeing some cannons. Now a lot of people, when they see Banshees, they immediately assume that Cloak is shortly behind it and whatnot. Now if we just take a quick pause, look at that army supply, and oh, I am still ahead by quite a bit. Looks like that Banshee's almost done. I don't think I added, oh well, there's a 4th Marauder over here. Actually, whoa, there's a bunch of Marauders now. So it looks like I may be slightly ahead on the army production side, which is kind of surprising. But you know, with 4-gate, with the 4-gate, while you're waiting to charge, your gates are waiting to charge up, it's natural for you to become slightly behind. So at this point, we were just waiting, waiting for some action to happen, and here he comes. And then notice here the Banshees are still there, but have I selected them? No, it doesn't look like it. I think I'm still over here in the base selecting something. Oh, I started researching an armor upgrade, which probably won't matter. The armor upgrades and weapon upgrades do take some time to build. And it looks like I was briefly supply blocked, but that will not be the case as soon as this army comes into attack. So if we look at the army supply tab, he is down by only 7, and don't forget, these 9 supply worth of Banshees are up here, so he is doing pretty well checking out the worker supply. I'm now actually ahead on workers, which is you know, kind of expected. If he's doing 4-gate, he's going to be focusing all of his minerals and whatnot on attacking units. Checking out his resource tab, he's got a lot of banked gas. So I think what this says is that he could have moved some workers over to minerals. Since his army is more mineral heavy, the Stalkers and the Zealots being more mineral heavy. But here they come to try to make it up the ramp. None of these units are upgraded except for that Stim. Just got a handful of Marines from at the beginning of the game, and now 6 Marauders and 5 Hellions. So that's a pretty good bunch here. And I think somewhere, no, so still sending stuff up to the north. So we'll see how this first engagement goes. So he turns on the Guardian Shield. Now at this point, the Protoss player, as just looking at entrance ramp mechanics here, so at this point he can see up to the ramp, he can see these attacking units. I think some of that is these units are at the bottom of the ramp here, so he does have vision up here, and you can see some of these shots being directed towards the top of the ramp, which is very good. Pop on the hit points tab and we can see how this is going. And we'll just slow this down just to see exactly how this battle progresses. So right now he's at a very disadvantageous point. He has all these units at the bottom of the ramp, and I have units from both sides of the ramp that are able to fire down on units that are in the middle. And so as you saw earlier, there were 2 Stalkers here, and they got taken out pretty quickly just because there's all this fire focused on them right here. So he really needs to push up to the ramp so that his units can attack, or somehow maybe pick one side or the other to have these units at the bottom. He can either have these units come over to the side or have these units come over to this side so that more of them can focus on a particular group at a time. Now, as we start the time, we'll see that he's focusing on trying to get down that supply depot, which worked out very well. That did supply block me. A bunch of these units coming out to continue the attack. He's putting down force fields to try to trap some units. He did a good job of that, killing off that Hellion. But right at that moment, I start moving in my Banshees, and now a 4th Banshee joins. So now I have 4 Banshees in his practically undefended base. There are no cannons as he's been focusing on warping in units, I'm assuming. Now don't forget we are on normal speed, so the Banshees come in and start to attack. He gets a notification as he comes in for this 3rd and final attack. Once again, you can see units in the back not being utilized because they're stuck. Now they're moving up the ramp, giving him a much better ability to attack units over here on the right hand side, so he's going to be able to make it in pretty well. And just a quick pause right here, let's look at the units killed tab. So at this point, I do have some workers that I have killed, and our unit killed tab, I have killed more than he has. And checking out the army supply tab, of course, I'm much higher with these completely unharassed Banshees over in his main. I did take out a pylon here and a pylon there that has depowered some of his gates, but actually he's still on 4-gate, which is perfectly fine in his case, but he doesn't have any defensive units inside of his base. Now, if we take a look at these gates that are left, they're still recharging. They still have a little bit of recharging time. This one could pop in a stalker. So if he can bring in 4 stalkers, he could do some work at trying to pull down these banshees. But these banshees, with all 4 of them together, do quite a bit of damage against ground units. So, and this fight here, he has 7 stalkers left, a very damaged sentry, versus 4 marauders and 5 marines. So I think even in this battle he's going to be outnumbered. And again, once there's a defender's advantage when you're coming into a base where your opponent will be building units right inside the base. So that is a big disadvantage for the attacker. Although he does have the gateways, excuse me, warp gates that he can warp in units. So being able to warp in units does mitigate the advantage of you're walking into an opponent's base where his units will be popping out of buildings as you fight. It does mitigate that damage, but once the engagement starts and once you're this far, especially this far away from your proxy pylon, you are at a disadvantage there. And don't forget, I have an army of workers back here that can do quite a bit of damage. So these units are going to try to come in, try to hit that worker line, moving around the buildings, which have caused kind of this maze for them to have to work through. And these units, army units, are stemming in behind them, and now they are trapped between the army units and the SCVs, and the SCVs going in for the kill, trapping his units. There's a little bit of misclicking there. His units weren't attacking momentarily, and as they explode, he leaves the game, which is reasonable considering that these banshees have just been free to attack probes at will without any micromanagement back at his base. So now he did have quite a bit of supply, banked up minerals and gas, so he could have brought in quite a few units here to try to defend against this, although killing this pylon did take out this warp gate as well, so that he only had 3 warp gates to work with. But I think if he had not necessarily attacked the front, although I don't know, I mean, when you get to this point, your units are all the way across the map. That's one of the disadvantages of the 4 gate if you keep pressing it. I mean, don't forget, this was his 3rd push up this ramp, a 3rd push, and actually it wasn't until the middle of the 3rd push that the banshees came into his base. And so, that's the trick with 4 gate, is knowing whether you're just going to keep pressing the 4 gate, trying to get in, or whether you do that pressure, get your opponent to build maybe more of a particular unit than he needs to, and then backing off and going for some kind of macro build. I'm not quite sure why he broke down these rocks, if he was intending to mine from them somehow, but he definitely didn't expand, and so I think he was really putting everything into this 4 gate. And just another note for Terran players, don't forget to build these sensor towers. The last game I played against Andrew, if you remember, I had a couple of sensor towers out, and I was really able to see where his units were with respect to mine, and that really helped. And in this game, it helped out a lot. I could tell that he had a group here waiting for the 4 gate, so I knew I still need to keep pumping out units up here at the front. And I did take a gamble to take those banshees up into his base. Although, honestly, if these banshees were not at his base, if they were back here at my base defending, his attacking group would have been at a severe disadvantage. And I think he may have GG'd either way. Yeah, so kind of an interesting game. Very unexpected for myself. I'm used to losing to Protoss and Zerg as a Terran. So very surprised that it kind of turned out this way, but I think a lot of people do not expect Terrans to build banshees, and I think they really do expect the banshees to have cloak researched. And so on my case, I was able to save 200 minerals and 200 gas by having these banshees be non-upgraded banshees. And you saw they did quite a bit of damage just fine by themselves, but a lot of that was due to his strategy of doing the 4 gate and really putting on the pressure on that entrance ramp. So it's kind of an interesting game, and there's probably just a few more nights left in Season 5, so should be seeing games in Season 6 coming up, and hopefully they have some new maps, although I haven't heard anything about new maps, so we could be dealing with the same map pool for Season 6. But alright, GosuDad signing off, and we'll see you guys next time.